this overall perception of who you are as an individual and what your views are.
No, I understand. The NGO kind of attacks on me, which have stressed the 9/11 issue, are at the very in my view, at the very border of defamation because they misstate my views. I'm very clear on what I believe and what I don't believe about 9/11, and what I have said consistently is there's some unanswered questions that should be examined. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have no view as to what actually happened. I just feel the official narrative in its present form is not compelling. I also happen to be a friend of David Ray Griffin, who's a philosopher of religion, and I've known him for 30 years, not at all in the 9/11 context, and I've been supportive of him. He's an honest person. He may be wrong in his perceptions of 9/11, but we need to hear critical views in a democratic society. And to make 9/11 the third rail of American politics that you can't discuss is, it seems to me, not constructive in any way that I can understand. There are lots of people that question, for various reasons, the official narrative. And as I say, I'm not expert on it, and beyond feeling that there are some important unanswered questions. As far as my personal views...
Yes, please. As someone who's always admired your intellectual integrity, I congratulate you on not being crushed by the official orthodoxy on 9/11. Some of us appreciate it. This is, I believe, a country that's not ruled by a power like the Vatican, which prevented Galileo from stating a different point of view.
I'd been critical of you and you weren't aware of others. I just wanted to ask what you thought during the 9/11 controversy. I think that Vijay Nambiar, the chief of staff of Ban Ki-moon, wrote this letter saying your views were inappropriate, etc. Whether you I wanted your comments.
Well, the first question is really how to respond to the attacks from
General and the chief of staff, or his letter. I just wanted to know what you thought of it.
Well, I didn't like it too well, but by clarifying, it was a misinterpretation of my blog that was originally used by NGO Monitor to push this contention that I was a 9/11 conspiracy theorist, and as far as I know, the Secretary General really didn't look beyond that letter to assess the accuracy of that allegation. As I've tried to answer in the previous question, I feel, as an American citizen, that I have every right to raise questions about public issues, and that this issue is an important issue for many Americans and for people outside the United States. And the effort to intimidate and sort of have a punitive response because I suggested that there's some unanswered questions in the official narrative seems to me to be an effort at encroaching upon freedom of expression. It certainly was trying to intimidate and discredit me by something that's irrelevant to the mandate, and it is consistent with what I've found to be the frequent tactics used against anyone who's critical of Israel, that instead of focusing on the substance of their criticism, there is an effort to focus on either the auspices or the person that is making the criticisms.
Thank you. Yes, please.
On September 11th, sorry to dwell on this again, but I don't quite understand what your views are, because you say you're skeptical, which is fine, you can be skeptical, but what do you believe happened?
I don't.
What factors do you hold to be the truth, and what specific things leave you puzzled?
What I've tried to say, and maybe it is a somewhat confusing position to take, is that I haven't studied it enough myself to have an independent view. And I tend to, in my writing, if you really look at my writing outside of the 9/11 context, I more or less proceed on the assumption that the official version is more or less correct. But at the same time, I feel that those who have been skeptical, of whom I know the leading person as a human being very well and respect him as a scholar and truthful person, and reading his some of what he's written raises important questions that the 9/11 Commission didn't address. There's now FBI testimony to the effect that they were instructed to destroy some of the evidence that the 9/11 Commission requested. I'm not an expert on this. All I know is that people I respect feel that there's more questions of a crucial character that need to be answered to have closure on the issue.
What specific narrative of the official version do you accept? For instance, how do you feel about it being 19 terrorists involved, mostly from Saudi Arabia, for instance? I mean, can you talk to some of the specifics, maybe?
No, what I'm trying to say is that, especially recently, I've never held myself out as an expert on 9/11. I have talked a good deal about the implications of 9/11, the response that occurred after the attacks and the international ramifications of that. But the 9/11 events themselves, I haven't really explored in a way that gives me any confidence in answering your question one way or the other.
Mr. Falk, it seems a little disingenuous. If I were, for instance, being accused of being a 9/11 conspiracy theorist and other issues, I would read up on the subject and really get a grip on what at least I can figure out, and you're professing that you really don't understand it. Does this mean you really don't care what people think about your opinions, or that you just don't care enough about the issue? Then if you don't care enough about the issue to learn and educate yourself about what's out there, then why don't you share it?
I think you're misunderstanding my position.
It's very confusing. Please, I'd love to understand your position. If you could explain it, I might understand it.
I know enough to know that to really answer the central questions, you have to devote a lot of time and energy to do that. And I just haven't felt, given the other demands on my time, that I can do that. I also feel that the attacks on me that have used the 9/11 have been so off the wall, so to speak. They have not reflected in any even remotely fair or reasonable way what my beliefs and what I've said in my blog and elsewhere, so that I don't feel that an irresponsible attack deserves a responsible answer.
With all due respect, I'm going to leave this briefing. For all you said about 9/11, I still don't understand what your opinion is. I don't know what you believe and what you don't believe. All I believe is that all I believe is what you said, that you're skeptical, but you haven't given any concrete information.
But you seem unable to understand uncertainty.
Uncertainty I can understand. You're taking time to write editorials, to write blogs, and speak out and write prefaces, or I think it was a chapter for your friend's book. You're obviously captivated by the subject, so why, if you're so captivated about the subject, do you not speak in explicit terms about certain facts and areas of the facts and narrative that are troublesome to you,
You're
sir?
confusing the subject with what I've been writing about. I have never written about what happened at 9/11.
Sir, you filed an editorial for Al Jazeera on the 10th anniversary of the 9/11
I said
attack.
I've written about the implications of 9/11, the international political implications, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the domestic security implications. That has no bearing on what actually happened on 9/11.
Will you at least answer some of the concrete beliefs that you have?
Yes. Let's move on.
I've answered you to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I'd like to ask one question. I earlier raised the issue of Galileo having provoked a very violent reaction from the Vatican was 500 years ago. Why is it that anyone who questions the official, I will call it dogma, on 9/11, is then so suspect and perceived as subversive? Why is any questioning of the official dogma so threatening to certain interests?
I'm not sure I understood fully. You mean why is that such a hot-button issue?
Exactly. I mean, why does it scare the living daylights out of people to even question an orthodoxy when right after 9/11, FBI agent Colleen, I believe, Dooley, published reports saying that the FBI office believed that there was a plant or inside the whole, because every time they try to alert the main office about potential dangers, their reports were buried, and the FBI was suspicious of why.
Yeah, well, I think there are a lot of indications of responses of this sort that is what generates suspicion about the official version, and it creates a kind of ethos of suspicion about whether we can believe what the government wants us to believe. That doesn't mean necessarily that what the government is saying is false. It just means that there's a healthy skepticism that arises in relation to this kind of issue that's so central to the legitimacy of the governing process here. And one certainly wants to be in a country where you can trust the government. And therefore we should welcome people who are prepared to risk their reputations by raising these questions. I have
Al-Qaeda, if Al-Qaeda took credit and objects to other people thinking they didn't do 9/11. I realize there was a big fight with the U.S. government, but in all situations, like in the 9/11 Commission, not everything the U.S. government puts out as a conspiracy and a lie, and everybody has a right to question it, but this place is starting to sound like the Iranian president, investigated 9/11. Sorry, I found it very frustrating of just throwing around every bit without contradiction, both from the questioners and from you.
No, I'm sorry that you do.
I think on that note, we will we'll wind up this question. I would like to thank Professor Falk for being so generous with his time and being with us today, and thank all of you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.